The massive space station orbited the bright star like a jewel made of metal and crystal. Nexus Prime was the most beautiful thing Captain Sarah Chen had ever seen. Ships from across the galaxy floated around it like colorful fish in a vast ocean. Each one was more amazing than the last. The Altarian vessels looked like they were made of pure diamond. They caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. The Drakmori ships were black as midnight and sharp as knives. They moved through space like hunting cats. The Collective's bioships pulsed with green light, looking more alive than built. The luminal craft were balls of pure energy that hurt to look at directly. The ancient Zephyrian ships seemed to float without any visible means of power at all. Then there was the human ship. The UES Indomitable looked like someone had taken an old cargo truck and tried to turn it into a warship. 200 years old and showing every day of it. The hull was covered in patches of different colored metal where repairs had been made. Thick cables ran along the outside like scars. The weapon turrets looked crude and simple compared to the smooth energy weapons of the other ships. Captain Chen stood on the bridge and watched the other ships through the main screen. Her crew worked quietly around her. They all knew what the other species thought of their ship. They had heard the whispers and seen the looks. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're getting our docking assignment." "Put it on screen," Chen replied. The face of a tall, elegant Altarian appeared. Its crystal-like features showed barely hidden amusement. "Human vessel Indomitable, you are assigned to docking bay 779. Please proceed slowly and carefully. We understand your ship may have difficulties with precise movement." Chen felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice calm. "Understood. Nexus control. Indomitable proceeding to dock." The Altarian's image flickered off. Torres shook his head. "Docking bay 779 is in the cargo section, Captain, not with the other warships." "I noticed," Chen said quietly. "Take us in, Mr. Yamamoto. Nice and easy." The helmsman nodded. The Indomitable turned toward the station. It moved slowly, but steadily, like an old man who knew where he was going. Around them, the other ships danced through space with impossible grace. The human ship just kept moving forward. As they approached the docking bay, Chen saw other human crew members watching from the observation decks. They had come from all across human space. 23 colony worlds had sent representatives. Earth itself had sent observers. This was supposed to be humanity's chance to show they belonged among the great powers of the galaxy. Instead, they looked like beggars at a rich man's party. The docking took longer than it should have. The Indomitable's old systems needed careful handling. Chen could imagine what the other species were saying about that. When they finally locked into place, she took a deep breath. "All right, people, time to meet our new friends." The main reception hall of Nexus Prime was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into shadows. Delegates from the 5 major species mingled in groups, their voices echoing in the vast space. Each species stayed mostly with their own kind. The Altarians clustered around displays of their newest ship designs. Their crystal bodies reflected light in patterns that probably meant something to them. The Drakmori officers stood in rigid formation, their scaled faces showing no emotion. The Collective's representatives moved in perfect unison, their hive mind making them almost dance together. The luminals floated above the floor, their energy forms shifting colors. The Zephyrians seemed to drift through the air without effort, and then there were the humans. Captain Chen led her senior officers through the hall. They wore their dress uniforms, which were simple blue and gray compared to the elaborate costumes of the other species. They walked like soldiers, straight-backed and alert. But Chen could feel the weight of all those alien eyes on them. Admiral Veltar of the Drakmori was the first to approach. He was tall even for his species, his black scales polished to a mirror shine. His yellow eyes looked down at Chen with something that might have been pity. "Captain Chen," he said in perfect English. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. I trust your vessel made the journey without too much trouble." "The Indomitable performed perfectly, Admiral," Chen replied. She kept her voice level and professional. Veltar's mouth opened slightly, showing sharp white teeth. It might have been a smile. "How wonderful. I was concerned when I saw your ship's design. It reminds me of vessels my people used centuries ago before we learned better." Other delegates had begun to gather around them. Chen could feel their attention like heat from a fire. The Altarian ambassador, whose name was something like a musical chord that human throats could not pronounce, stepped forward. "Captain Chen," the ambassador said, its voice like crystal bells. "We are all so curious about human military doctrine. Your ship's design is so traditional. Do your people not have access to modern shield technology or faster than light? Tactical drives?" Chen felt her face grow warm but kept her expression calm. "Human military doctrine emphasizes reliability and endurance, Ambassador. We build our ships to last." A sound like wind chimes came from the Altarian. It was probably laughter. "How charming, like keeping an antique weapon for its sentimental value." More delegates gathered around them now. Chen could see the curiosity in their eyes. Some seemed genuinely interested. Others looked like they were watching a circus act. The worst were the ones who looked at her with pity, like she was a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. A floating ball of blue light drifted down from above. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Luminal Collective wishes to understand human tactical thinking. Your vessel appears designed for direct confrontation rather than elegant maneuvering. Is this because your species lacks the neural complexity for advanced spatial reasoning?" The hall grew quiet. Chen felt her hands clench into fists behind her back. Around her, she could sense her officers growing tense. This was exactly what they had been afraid of. Not just dismissal, but open insult disguised as polite curiosity. "Human tactical thinking," Chen said carefully, "is based on the principle that the best plan is the one that works when everything else goes wrong." The luminal's light flickered. "How primitive." More laughter echoed through the hall, though not all of it was unkind. Some of the younger delegates seemed genuinely curious about the strange humans and their ancient ship. But the senior officers and ambassadors had already made up their minds. Chen looked around the hall at all the beautiful aliens with their beautiful ships. They saw her people as relics, dinosaurs too stupid to realize they were extinct. They were polite about it, mostly. But the message was clear. Humanity's day was over. Admiral Veltar raised one scaled hand for attention. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," he announced. "Tomorrow we begin the demonstration exercises. 5 days of friendly competition to showcase our various capabilities. I am sure we will all learn much from each other." His yellow eyes found Chen's. "All of us." The crowd began to break up into smaller groups. Chen and her officers found themselves alone in the center of the vast hall. Lieutenant Torres stepped closer to his captain. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "maybe we should consider withdrawing. This is starting to look like a setup." Chen shook her head. "We came here to represent humanity, Lieutenant. That's what we're going to do." She looked up at the ceiling of the hall, where the lights of hundreds of ships could be seen through. The transparent metal. Each one represented a species that had earned its place among the stars through strength, intelligence, and determination. Tomorrow, she thought, they would see what humans were really made of. The morning of the first exercises dawned bright and clear in space around Nexus Prime. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the other ships form up in the demonstration area. Each vessel moved with grace and speed that made her old ship look like a dying whale. The Altarian cruiser Phoenix Wing spun through a series of impossible loops. Its crystal hull caught the starlight and threw it back in dazzling patterns. The ship's movement was so smooth, it seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. Chen had read the reports about Altarian gravity manipulation technology, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. "Look at that," whispered Ensign Park from the sensor station. "They're pulling 15 Gs in that turn, but their crew isn't even feeling it." The Drakmori destroyer, Shadowfang, demonstrated next. The black ship moved like a hunting animal. It would drift slowly through space, then suddenly explode into motion. Its dark energy weapons carved bright lines across the void as it destroyed. Target drones with perfect accuracy. Even at maximum range, every shot hit exactly where it was aimed. "Their targeting computers are calculating shots 3 moves ahead," said Lieutenant Torres, studying his readouts. "They're not just hitting where the targets are, they're hitting where the targets are going to be." The collective's bio-ship Growing Storm was different again. The living vessel seemed to think about its movements before making them. When it did move, parts of the ship shifted and changed shape to make it more efficient. Weapons grew from its hull when needed, then melted back into the organic surface when the demonstration was over. "It's adapting in real time," said Chief Engineer Patel over the comm system. "The whole ship is redesigning itself based on what it needs to do. I've never seen anything like it." The luminal energy vessel Dancing Light was the most impressive of all. The ball of pure energy could move at nearly the speed of light in short bursts. It could pass through solid matter when it needed to. Its weapons were beams of concentrated starfire that could melt through asteroid rock like butter. Even the ancient Zephyrian ship Whisper of Wind showed abilities that seemed like magic. The elegant craft moved without any visible thrust, guided by technologies so advanced they might as well have been supernatural. It could become invisible to most sensors and strike from directions that should have been impossible. And then it was humanity's turn. The Indomitable moved out into the demonstration area like an old bus joining a race of sports cars. Chen could hear the communications chatter from the other ships. Most of it was in alien languages, but she didn't need a translator to understand the tone. They were making jokes. "All right, people," Chen announced to her crew. "Let's show them what we can do." The human ship began its demonstration routine. It moved in straight lines and simple curves. When it turned slowly. When it accelerated, it took time to build up speed. There were no impossible maneuvers or gravity-defying stunts. Just a big, tough ship doing basic maneuvers with steady competence. The weapons test came next. The Indomitable's kinetic cannons fired solid metal slugs at the target drones. The shots were accurate enough, but they looked crude compared to the elegant energy weapons of the other species. The human ship had to lead its targets by significant amounts because its projectiles took time to travel through space. "Primitive. Ballistics," Chen heard Admiral Veltar comment over an open channel. "How nostalgic." But Chen noticed something the aliens were missing. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Kim, was making shots that should have been impossible with such simple systems. He was calculating trajectories in his head, adjusting for the movement of both ship and target, compensating for gravitational effects from the nearby star. The math involved was incredibly complex, but he was doing it by instinct and experience. More importantly, the Indomitable kept firing long after the other ships had to pause to recharge their energy weapons or cool their systems. The kinetic cannons could fire continuously as long as they had ammunition, and the ship carried a lot of ammunition. "They're not stopping," observed the collective's bio-ship over the communication network. "Why are they not stopping to recharge?" "Because we don't need to," Chen thought but didn't say. The endurance trials were next. Each ship had to maintain maximum combat readiness for as long as possible while performing evasive maneuvers. One by one, the alien vessels began to show signs of strain. Their exotic technologies required enormous amounts of energy. Their sleek hulls started to overheat. Their advanced systems began to need maintenance. The Altarian ship was first to withdraw. Its crystal hull was showing stress fractures from the repeated high-G maneuvers. The Drakmori destroyer lasted longer, but its dark energy weapons started to malfunction after an hour of continuous operation. The collective's bioship began to look tired, its movements becoming sluggish as its living systems demanded rest. Even the luminal vessel started to dim as it exhausted its energy reserves. The Indomitable kept going. Chen walked through her ship during the trials, checking on her crew. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Patel was monitoring systems that had been designed to run for months without stopping. The fusion reactors that powered the ship were simple and robust. They had been built by engineers who understood that pretty and efficient weren't always the same thing. In the weapons bays, crews were loading ammunition by hand when the automated systems couldn't keep up. The kinetic cannons were hot from continuous firing, but they were designed for exactly this kind of sustained operation. The ship's targeting computers were old and slow, but they were also reliable. They wouldn't break down under stress like more advanced systems might. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the bridge. "The other ships are requesting a break in the exercises." Chen looked at the tactical display. The alien vessels were drifting in space, their crews working frantically to repair systems and recharge power cells. The Indomitable was still moving, still firing, still ready for whatever came next. "Tell them we're ready to continue whenever they are," Chen replied. On the observation deck of Nexus Prime, the alien dignitaries were having quiet conversations. Some seemed concerned. Others looked thoughtful. A few appeared almost embarrassed. The Altarian ambassador's crystal features were dim with fatigue. How long can they maintain this level of activity? Admiral Veltar's yellow eyes were fixed on the human ship. "Their technology is primitive," he said slowly. "But primitive does not always mean ineffective." The luminal representative flickered with uncertainty. "Perhaps we have misunderstood human capabilities, but most of the observers still saw only what they expected to see. A crude, outdated vessel with simple weapons and basic systems. They could not imagine that these limitations might actually be strengths. They had built their ships to be perfect, for ideal conditions. The humans had built theirs for when conditions went bad. As the exercises continued over the following days, patterns began to emerge. The alien ships were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed. In any short engagement, they would win easily. But the Indomitable had something they lacked, the ability to keep fighting when everything went wrong. When systems failed, the human crew fixed them with spare parts and determination. When ammunition ran low, they rationed their shots but kept firing. When their ship took damage, they patched the holes and kept going. They were like a boxer who couldn't throw the hardest punch, but who could take more punishment than anyone expected. Chen began to notice some of the alien observers paying closer attention to her ship. Not all of them were laughing anymore. Some were taking notes. A few looked worried. On the fourth day of exercises, long-range sensors detected something approaching from the edge of the system. At first, it looked like another group of ships coming to watch the demonstrations. Then the sensor readings became clearer. 200 ships, all of them armed, all of them moving in attack formation toward Nexus Prime. The Void Reapers had arrived. The alarm klaxons echoed through Nexus Prime like the wail of a dying animal. In the command center of the massive station, alien officers rushed between control panels while holographic displays showed the approaching threat. 200 pirate ships moving in perfect attack formation, their hulls scarred with battle damage and their weapons already charging. Captain Chen stood in the emergency briefing room with the other fleet commanders. The elegant chamber that had hosted diplomatic receptions just hours before was now filled with the harsh light of tactical displays and the nervous energy of military officers preparing for battle. Admiral Veltar's scaled face was grim as he studied the sensor readings. The Void Reapers. They haven't been seen in this sector for over a year. Intelligence suggested they were operating in the Outer Rim territories. The Altarian ambassador's crystal form flickered with stress patterns. 200 ships. We have less than 30 combat-capable vessels, and most of those were designed for ceremonial purposes. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. The Void Reapers were a mixture of different species who had turned to piracy. Their ships were cobbled together from stolen technology and salvaged parts. They looked rough and crude, but Chen knew better than to underestimate an enemy who had survived this long in a galaxy full of advanced military forces. "What's their estimated time of arrival?" she asked. A young Luminol officer flickered nervously. 6 hours, Captain. They're pushing their engines hard, probably want to hit us before we can organize a proper defense. The collective's hive mind representative spoke with the voice of 1,000 beings thinking as one. Our bioships are not fully mature. They require another week of growth before they can function at full combat capacity. Admiral Veltar nodded grimly. The Shadow Fang is operational, but she's designed for surgical strikes, not fleet engagements. The other Drakmori vessels in the system are escorts and transports. The Phoenix Wing suffered hull damage during yesterday's exercises, added the Altarian ambassador. Our repair crews estimate another 18 hours before she can safely engage in combat. Chen listened to the catalog of problems and limitations. Each species had brought their finest vessels to the demonstration, but those ships had been chosen for show rather than real combat capability. They were like parade uniforms, beautiful to look at, but not much good in a fight. "What about evacuation?" asked a Zephyrian commander, whose voice seemed to come from the air itself. "We could withdraw the non-combat vessels and call for reinforcements. The nearest major fleet is 4 days away," Veltar replied. "The pirates will be long gone by then, along with everything they can steal from Nexus Prime." The station itself was heavily shielded and armed, but it was designed to defend against single ships or small raiding parties, not a full pirate fleet. The Void Reapers had clearly planned this attack carefully, timing it for when the galaxy's military leaders would be gathered in one place with minimal protection. Chen studied the display showing their available forces. 30 ships against 200. In any normal tactical situation, it would be a massacre. But as she looked at the alien vessels, she began to see possibilities the others were missing. "We need to use what we have," she said quietly. "Admiral." Veltar's yellow eyes fixed on her. "Captain, with respect, 30 ships cannot hold off 200. Even if every vessel performs perfectly, we are simply outnumbered." "Not 30 ships," Chen replied. "One fleet." The room fell silent. The alien commanders looked at her with expressions ranging from confusion to skepticism. They were used to thinking of space combat in terms of individual ship capabilities. Each species fought according to their own doctrine and technology. The idea of truly integrated fleet operations was foreign to them. "Explain," said the collective's representative. Chen stepped closer to the tactical display. "Your ships are faster and more maneuverable than mine. Your weapons are more advanced. Your technology is superior in almost every way. But you're thinking like individual species instead of like a fleet." She pointed to the display showing the pirate formation. "The Void Reapers are pirates, but they're successful pirates. They know how to work together. They use combined tactics because they have to. Their ships are inferior to yours individually, but they fight as a unit." Admiral Veltar's expression was thoughtful. "You're suggesting we coordinate our defense." "I'm suggesting we do more than coordinate," Chen said. "I'm suggesting we integrate. Use each ship's strengths to cover another ship's weaknesses. Turn 30 individual vessels into one fighting force." The Altarian ambassador's crystal form brightened slightly. The Phoenix Wing's gravitational systems could provide maneuverability advantages to slower vessels. If we could extend our field manipulation to other ships, the Shadowfang's targeting computers could provide fire-controlled data to the entire fleet, Veltar added, beginning to see the possibilities. Our sensors are designed to track multiple targets simultaneously. The collective's representative tilted its head in that peculiar way hive minds used when all their bodies were thinking together. Our bioships could provide communication, links between vessels. Organic neural networks can process information faster than electronic systems in some applications. Chen nodded. The luminal vessels could provide power redistribution. Energy beings understand power flow better than anyone, and the Zephyrian ships could coordinate movement patterns using their advanced spatial awareness. And the human ship? Asked Admiral Veltar. Chen smiled grimly. The Indomitable will do what human ships do best. We'll take the hits meant for everyone else and keep fighting when everything goes wrong. The plan was ambitious. More than ambitious, it was desperate. They had less than 6 hours to coordinate combat doctrines that had evolved separately over thousands of years. They had to integrate technologies that were barely compatible. They had to create trust between species that had been competitors just hours before, but they didn't have a choice. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Engineering crews worked frantically to establish communication links between different ship systems. Tactical officers shared targeting protocols and combat data. Pilots practiced maneuvers they had never attempted before. The Altarian crystal ships created gravitational fields that could boost the acceleration of nearby vessels. The Drakmori targeting systems began sharing fire control data with every ship in the fleet. The collective's bioships extended neural communication networks that allowed near-instantaneous coordination. The luminal energy vessels prepared to redirect power where it was needed most. The Zephyrian ships calculated movement patterns for the entire fleet, and the Indomitable prepared to be the anvil on which the pirate fleet would break. Chen stood on her bridge, watching her crew make final preparations. They had volunteered for the most dangerous position in the fleet formation. The human ship would anchor the defensive line, drawing enemy fire while the more agile alien vessels struck from multiple angles. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres, "the alien ships are reporting ready for combat operations." Chen looked at the tactical display. 30 ships from 6 different species, their technologies integrated in ways that had never been attempted before. It was either going to be the most effective fleet in galactic history or the most spectacular failure. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships prepare for enemy contact. Let's show these pirates what happens when the galaxy's military forces actually work together." On the long-range sensors, the Void Reaper fleet was entering the outer system. 200 ships strong, confident in their overwhelming numbers, expecting to find easy targets and rich prizes. They were about to learn that they had made a very serious mistake. The battle began at the edge of the system, where the pirate fleet met the outer defensive perimeter. The first shots lit up space like deadly fireworks as energy beams and kinetic projectiles crossed the void between the opposing forces. "Captain," Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the carefully planned fleet formation engaged the enemy. The integrated defense was working better than anyone had dared hope. The Altarian ships used their gravity manipulation to boost their allies' speed and maneuverability. The Drakmori targeting systems painted targets for the entire fleet. The collective's bioships provided real-time communication that kept everyone coordinated, but the Void Reapers had not survived this long by being easy opponents. Their ships might be crude and improvised, but their crews knew how to fight. They came at the defenders in waves, accepting heavy losses to overwhelm individual positions. "Multiple enemy contacts breaking through Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Torres. "The Zephyrian vessel, Whisper of Wind, is taking heavy fire." On the tactical display, Chen could see the elegant alien ship spinning desperately to avoid the concentrated attacks of a dozen pirate vessels. Its advanced stealth systems were useless at close range, and its delicate hull couldn't take much. "Punishment! Signal the fleet," Chen ordered. "All units converge on Sector 7. Priority assistance to Whisper of Wind." The integrated fleet responded like a single organism. The Phoenix Wing created a gravitational well that pulled 3 pirate ships off course. The Shadow Fang's dark energy weapons carved through enemy formations with surgical precision. The bio-ship's growing storm shifted their hulls to present smaller targets while their organic weapons adapted to counter enemy fire. But it wasn't enough. The pirates had too many ships and too much firepower. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. The defenders were being slowly overwhelmed despite their superior coordination. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Patel from the engine room. "We're getting requests for power redistribution from half the fleet. The alien ships are burning through their energy reserves faster than expected." Chen wasn't surprised. The exotic technologies that made the alien ships so capable also made them energy-hungry. They had been designed for short, decisive engagements, not prolonged battles against overwhelming odds. "Signal the luminal vessels," she ordered. "Begin power transfer operations. Route auxiliary power to any ship that needs it." The Dancing Light and its sister ships began channeling energy to their allies. Streams of pure power flowed from the energy beings to the exhausted alien vessels, keeping their shields up and their weapons firing. But even that wasn't going to be enough. The pirate fleet kept coming, wave after wave of desperate criminals who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They absorbed casualties that would have broken a more disciplined force and kept attacking. "Enemy breakthrough in Sector 4, Torres announced. "Multiple pirate vessels heading directly for Nexus Prime." Chen saw the tactical situation deteriorating rapidly. The integrated fleet had performed miracles, but they were facing impossible odds. In a few more minutes, the defensive line would collapse entirely. "All ships," she announced over the fleet communication network, "fall back to secondary defensive positions around the station. We're going to make our stand here." The surviving ships of the integrated fleet pulled back toward Nexus Prime, fighting a running battle against the pursuing pirates. Ships that had been showcases of advanced technology just hours before were now battle-damaged and running low on power. But they were still fighting, and they were still working together. The Indomitable took position at the center of the new defensive line. Around her, the alien ships formed a protective screen, their remaining weapons ready for the final assault. The pirates sensed victory and came charging in for the kill. That's when Chen revealed the first of humanity's hidden advantages. "Weapons. Free," she ordered. "Activate manufacturing protocols. All departments prepare for extended combat operations." Deep in the hull of the Indomitable, automated factories that the aliens had mistaken for cargo bays came online. Fabrication systems that could produce ammunition, spare parts, and even basic ship components in the middle of battle. The ship's industrial capacity was something no other species had thought to include in their warship designs. The human ship's kinetic cannons began firing at a rate that should have been impossible. Instead of carefully rationed shots, they poured continuous streams of metal projectiles into the enemy formation. Other ships had to pause to reload or recharge. The Indomitable just kept shooting. "How are they maintaining that rate of fire?" demanded the captain of a pirate cruiser over an intercepted communication channel. His question was answered when the Indomitable's manufacturing bays launched clouds of replacement ammunition canisters toward the Allied ships. The aliens watched in amazement as the human vessel resupplied the entire fleet while continuing to fight. But the real surprise came when the pirates tried to disable the human ship with focused fire. Energy beams that should have cut through the hull barely scratched the thick armor plating. Missile impacts that would have crippled more elegant vessels only left scorch marks on the redundant hull sections. "Their ship is still operational," reported a confused pirate sensor operator. "We've hit them with enough firepower to destroy 3 normal vessels." "Then hit them with enough for 6, snarled the pirate fleet commander. The concentrated fire that followed would have vaporized any of the alien ships instantly. The Indomitable staggered under the assault, her hull glowing white-hot in places. But she kept fighting. Her crew worked with mechanical efficiency to repair damage, reroute power, and keep the weapons firing. Chen walked through her ship during the battle, checking on damage control teams and repair crews. In engineering, Chief Patel was performing miracles with spare parts and determination. "We've got hull breaches on decks 5 through 7, he reported, but the compartmentalization is holding. Reactor output is down to 60%, but we can maintain it indefinitely. In the weapons bays, crews were loading ammunition by hand when the automated systems couldn't keep up. The kinetic cannons were glowing red hot, but they had been designed for exactly this kind of punishment. Human engineering had prioritized reliability over elegance, endurance over efficiency. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from the bridge, "the alien ships are reporting critical system failures. They can't maintain this level of combat much longer." Chen looked at the tactical display. The beautiful, advanced alien vessels were falling back one by one as their exotic technologies reached their limits. Their power systems were overloaded, their weapons were overheated, and their crews were exhausted. But the Indomitable was still there, still fighting, still protecting the others. The pirates recognized this too. Their fleet commander, a scarred veteran of 100 raids, stared at the human ship in disbelief. "What kind of monsters are these humans?" he whispered. His tactical officer, a nervous creature from one of the rim worlds, checked his instruments again. "Sir, they've taken enough damage to destroy a battle station, but they're still operational at nearly full combat effectiveness." The pirate commander's expression grew grim. He had built his reputation on knowing when to attack and when to retreat. His survival instincts were screaming at him now. This wasn't going according to plan. The humans weren't behaving like any enemy he had faced before. They were supposed to break when things went bad. Instead, they seemed to get stronger. "Signal the fleet," he ordered reluctantly. "Concentrate all fire on the human vessel. If we can't break their spirit, maybe we can at least break their ship." Every pirate weapon in the attacking fleet turned toward the Indomitable. The barrage that followed was like a miniature star going nova. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, missiles, and exotic weapons all focused on the single human ship. The Indomitable vanished in a ball of fire and radiation that lit up half the system. When the glare faded, even the pirate crews fell silent, certain that nothing could have survived such an assault. Then the smoke cleared, and the human ship was still there. The Indomitable emerged from the firestorm like a phoenix made of metal and determination. Her hull was scorched black and glowing in places. Entire sections had been blasted away, revealing the complex internal structure beneath. But her engines were still running, her weapons were still firing, and her crew was still fighting. Captain Chen stood on a bridge that looked like it had been through an earthquake. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. But her officers were still at their posts, still doing their jobs with the calm professionalism that had made humanity respected throughout their small corner of the galaxy. "Damage report," she called out. Chief Engineer Patel's voice came through the damaged communication system, crackling with static but still clear. "We've lost about 30% of our hull plating, Captain. Decks 4 through 8 have been sealed off due to atmosphere loss, but the main systems are still operational. Weapons are at 70% capacity, engines at 60%, life support is stable." Chen nodded. In any other ship, that level of damage would have meant mission kill at best, total destruction at worst. But the Indomitable had been built by people who understood that things went wrong in combat. Every critical system had backups, and every backup had alternatives. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All remaining ships form up for final assault. We're going to end this." The surviving alien vessels moved to support the human ship, their crews amazed that anything could survive what they had just witnessed. The Phoenix wing, her crystal hull cracked but still functional, took position on the Indomitable's starboard side. The Shadow Fang, running on emergency power but still deadly, moved to port. The bioship growing storm, its organic hull healing itself even as it fought, covered the rear approach. But it was the Indomitable that led the charge toward the pirate fleet's command ship. The pirates had expected their massive bombardment to end the battle. When it didn't, something broke inside their formation. Ships that had been willing to fight a damaged station and a handful of ceremonial vessels suddenly found themselves facing something they didn't understand. The human ship shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be able to take that much punishment and keep fighting, but there it was, moving steadily toward them like an unstoppable force of nature. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," ordered the pirate fleet commander, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Continue firing until it's destroyed." The pirates poured everything they had at the advancing human ship. The Indomitable's shields had failed long ago, but her thick armor plating absorbed punishment that would have vaporized more elegant vessels. When armor sections were blasted away, redundant hull layers beneath continued to protect the crew. When weapons were destroyed, other weapons took their place. Chen felt the ship shudder around her with each impact, but she never wavered from her course. Her crew worked with the kind of coordinated efficiency that only came from years of training and mutual trust. When systems failed, they fixed them. When equipment was damaged, they improvised replacements. When things looked impossible, they found a way. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres reported, "the alien ships are requesting permission to fall back. They're concerned about getting caught in our engagement with the enemy flagship." Chen looked at the massive pirate command vessel ahead of them. It was twice the size of the Indomitable and bristling with weapons. Under normal circumstances, it would have been suicide for a damaged cargo hauler to engage a ship like that, in single combat. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Tell our allies to stand clear," Chen ordered. "This is going to get rough." The Indomitable accelerated toward the enemy flagship, her damaged engines pushing the big ship faster than should have been possible. The pirates fired everything they had at the approaching human vessel, but nothing seemed to stop her advance. In the final moments before impact, Chen activated the ship's most closely guarded secret. Hidden throughout the Indomitable's hull were shaped charges designed to channel explosive force outward while protecting the crew compartments. It was a last resort weapon that could only be used once, but it could turn even an old cargo hauler into a devastating kinetic weapon. The collision between the two ships lit up space like a small star being born. The pirate flagship, built for intimidation rather than structural integrity, crumpled under the impact. The Indomitable's reinforced bow section drove deep into the enemy vessel's hull, carrying the human ship's remaining weapons into point-blank range with the pirate command center. For a moment, both ships hung motionless in space, locked together, in a deadly embrace. Then the Indomitable's remaining weapons opened fire at point-blank range, pouring kinetic projectiles and energy beams directly into the enemy ship's vital systems. The pirate flagship came apart like a building collapsing in slow motion. Secondary explosions rippled through its hull as ammunition stores and fuel tanks detonated. In less than a minute, the massive vessel was reduced to expanding clouds of debris and radiation. The Indomitable pulled back from the wreckage, her bow section crushed and her forward weapons destroyed, but still operational. Around her, the remaining pirate ships began to break formation. Their leader was dead. Their flagship was destroyed, and they were facing an enemy that refused to die. One by one, the pirate vessels turned and fled toward the edge of the system. The few that tried to continue fighting found themselves facing the coordinated fire of the integrated fleet. Without their numerical advantage and with their morale broken, they were quickly destroyed or driven off. In the aftermath of the battle, rescue ships from Nexus Prime moved among the wreckage, searching for survivors and beginning the long process of cleanup. The station itself was damaged but intact, its valuable facilities and population saved by the desperate defense. Captain Chen stood in what remained of her ship's observation lounge, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Void, Reaper Fleet. The Indomitable was barely space-worthy. It would take months of work in a major shipyard to repair all the damage, but she was still here, and her crew was still alive. Admiral Veltar found her there, his scaled features showing, an expression she had never seen before. Respect, mixed with something that might have been awe. "Captain Chen," he said quietly, "the Galactic Council has asked me to extend their formal thanks for your actions today. Your ship and crew saved not just Nexus Prime, but the lives of thousands, of civilians and military personnel." Chen turned from the viewport. "We all fought together, Admiral. The integrated fleet concept worked because everyone contributed." "Perhaps," Veltar replied, "but it was your ship that anchored the defense. Your crew that refused to break when everything seemed hopeless. Your people who turned what should have been a massacre into a victory." Through the damaged viewport, Chen could see the other ships of the integrated fleet. The Phoenix Wing was already beginning repairs, her crystal hull restructuring itself. The Shadow Fang was taking on supplies and ammunition. The bioship Growing Storm was literally healing itself, new tissue replacing damaged sections. But it was the way their crews looked at the battered human ship that meant the most to Chen. There was no more condescension in their eyes, no more dismissal of human capabilities. They had seen what happened when humanity's primitive approach met impossible odds. "There will be changes," Admiral Veltar continued. "The Council wants to implement fleet integration protocols throughout the galaxy. They want human advisors to help redesign military doctrine. They want to understand how your people build ships that can take such punishment and keep fighting." Chen smiled. "The secret isn't in the technology, Admiral. It's in the people. Humans build things to last because we know the universe is trying to kill us. We train for the worst-case scenario because we've learned that's usually what happens. We keep fighting when everything goes wrong because giving up means everyone dies." The Altarian ambassador appeared in the doorway. Its crystal form brightened with patterns Chen had learned to recognize as excitement. "Captain, the Council has voted unanimously. Humanity is being offered full membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance, with Earth designated as the headquarters for the new Integrated Fleet Command." Chen looked out at the stars beyond the wreckage. For 200 years, humanity had been seen as a minor species with outdated technology and primitive thinking. Now, because they had refused to give up when everything looked hopeless, they were being offered a place among the galaxy's greatest powers. "Tell the Council we accept," she said. "But we do this our way. No more pretty ships that can't take a punch. No more elegant weapons that break when you need them most. We build for the real universe, not the one we wish we lived in." As rescue, operations continued around Nexus Prime. Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The story of how humanity's outdated starship had anchored the defense against impossible odds became legend. Military academies began teaching courses on human tactical doctrine. Shipyards started incorporating human design principles into their most advanced vessels. But the most important change was in how other species saw humanity itself. They were no longer the primitives clinging to obsolete technology.